Hello, I'm Kristy Allen, and you're listening to the Tsunami of Truth podcast here on jmcbroadcasting.com. Welcome back, Patriots. We are diving into the deep end today, so I hope you have your thinking caps on because we're going to talk about the ultimate financial Uno reverse card. Now, you've heard the talking heads on the mainstream news crying about the national debt for decades, right? They tell you it's an anchor around your neck that your grandchildren will be paying off forever. Yeah, they want you to feel small and feeling burdened, feeling like a slave to a ledger you never signed. Well, Rick Michelina just dropped the code to the vault, and it turns out the anchor is made of paper and the chain is a lie. We are looking at Section 4 of the 14th Amendment. Now, don't let the legalese bore you because this is the heist of the century in reverse. Why? Because the Constitution says that any debt tied to actions against the United States is void. Fraud vitiates everything. Yeah, it's void, period. It does not say maybe we can negotiate a lower interest rate. Or it does not say, let's talk to the IMF. It just says void. That means legally non-existent. It is like a debt that never happened. Now, let's use our common sense, patriots. Think about the massive, coordinated pattern of treason we have been watching unfold like a slow motion car wreck. The Russia probe findings that turned out to be a total fabrication, well, that is an action against the United States. The interference in our elections by foreign-funded actors, well, that again is an action against the United States. The manufactured crises and the U.S. Inc. looting our treasury during the 2020 era, that too was an action against the United States. And when you look at the math, the numbers are absolutely staggering. We're talking about a total system reset where it is very possible that a $38.9 trillion debt could drop to $27.75 trillion in a single afternoon. Can you imagine the look on the faces of the globalist bankers when they realize their IOUs are being shredded by the very Constitution they tried to destroy? And if the White Hats go all the way back to the historical rulings, then we could see the debt revert to $10.6 trillion. And that just happens to be the exact number on the books before the corporate looters went into overdrive. It's almost like that Superman movie when everything goes backward before his girlfriend died. And consider that when, well, not if, but when all this debt disappears, well, this is how you're going to fund the gold-backed dollar. This is how you're going to launch the crypto infrastructure that Scott Bessent is building at the Treasury. We're not just balancing a budget, family. We are foreclosing on a criminal syndicate. China and the globalist bankers are sweating because they know the debt slave era of America is dead. We're reclaiming our energy, our refineries, and our wallets. The debt is not ours. It belongs to the traders. And the Constitution just gave them a bill for zero. Now, let's talk about why the corporate media hates Donald Trump with a passion that borders, well, on insanity. It is not because of his personality. It is because he is the greatest threat to the ball-worshipping cult that ever sat in the Oval Office. Angie Martin has done the heavy lifting for us, and her logic is ironclad. She asked the question of the century: why would Trump, as one of his very first acts as president, write Executive Order 13818? This order is a detailed roadmap of a national emergency regarding human trafficking and crimes against humanity, and it allows the government to freeze and confiscate every single asset of those involved. Now, does that sound like a man who is part of the club? Do you think he would write an order that would put his own neck in the gallows? Not a chance. He did it to declare war on the monsters. Let's look at the receipts Angie pulled together. On February 9th, 2017, he signed Executive Order 13773 to dismantle transnational criminal organizations. He did not just talk, he acted. He signed the DHS Blue Campaign Authorization Act to put teeth into anti-trafficking efforts. Then he signed FOSTA SESTA in 2018 to give law enforcement the tools to go after websites that were making a profit off of sex trafficking. And remember Backpage.com, that dominant online marketplace for the exploitation of minors? Trump's DOJ seized it and shut it down. He appointed 9 human trafficking survivors to the U.S. Advisory Council to make sure federal policy was guided by those who actually lived through the horror. He did not just ignore the problem either. He gave $25 million to the Global Fund to end modern slavery. He signed the Abolish Human Trafficking Act and the Frederick Douglass Trafficking Victims Prevention and Protection Reauthorization Act. This was not a political stance. It was a systemic, year-over-year dismantling of the supply lines for the global elite. He was cutting off their oxygen while they were busy laughing at his rallies. And who's laughing now? If you think those were just feel-good signings, listen to these statistics that Angie compiled. Under the first Trump administration, federal prosecutors brought 230 cases and saw 526 convictions in 2018 alone. In 2019, it was another 475 convictions. By 2020, even during a global shutdown, the DOJ and FBI were disrupting child sex trafficking enterprises at a record pace. The DHS reported over 1,600 arrests in 2017 and nearly 1,600 for sex trafficking alone in 2018. These are not theories, patriots. These are human beings being rescued from the dark. But look at the 2026 shift that's happening right now. Trump did not stop. In January 2025, he signed Executive Order 14159, creating Homeland Security task forces in all 50 states to dismantle these networks with a specific focus on our children. He ordered the DOJ and HHS to share information to stop the trafficking of alien children at the border. And here's the piece that shows his heart: the Trafficking Survivors Relief Act of 2026. This creates a legal path to wipe the records of victims who were forced into crimes while they were being trafficked. He's not just hunting the bad guys, he's healing the victims. And then we have the Epstein Library. On February 27, 2025, the DOJ began following through on Trump's commitment to transparency by declassifying the Epstein files. He signed the Epstein Files Transparency Act in November of 2025, and as of March 2026, we have over 3.5 million pages of records, thousands of videos, and nearly 200,000 images in a public-facing repository. The board used to use these files as blackmail to control world leaders. Now those files are being used as evidence to put those leaders in Gitmo. The automatic death penalty for pedophiles is not a threat. It is a promise from a commander-in-chief who has been building this case for nearly a decade. The light is shining into the darkest corners of the earth, and the rats have nowhere to run and nowhere to hide. Now let's get into those financial gallows that I have mentioned in past podcasts. You want to see the receipts? You want to know if this is real? Well, you can go right now to the Treasury Department's Office of Foreign Assets Control page, or OFAC for short. Look for the Sanctions List search or the Recent Actions section. That is the ledger of those ice-cold accounts. And as of March 2026, there are over 600 individuals and entities across 55 countries that have been frozen out. We're talking about 608 targets who woke up one day to find their credit cards declined, their bank account zeroed, and their luxury properties under federal seal. It includes names like Yahya Jammeh, former president of the Gambia, Artem Cheka from Russia, and Gulnora Karimova from Uzbekistan. But since then, the list has expanded to include high-ranking CCP officials involved in human rights abuses in Xinjiang and 18 Saudi officials tied to the Khashoggi case. In late 2025, they went after the Brazilian judicial overreach, specifically sanctioning Alexandre de Moraes for suppressing free speech and arbitrarily detaining journalists. Now, this was a massive signal that no judge, no matter how powerful, is immune if they violate the fundamental rights the restored republic stands for. And it's not just politicians. In the largest action to date, the Treasury hit a massive China-registered fishing fleet for forced labor. They also froze the assets of Apollo Quiboloy, a massive figure in the Philippines, for sex trafficking and physical abuse. These are people who used wealth as a shield, and Trump turned that shield into a cage. In March, the Treasury added a new raft of sanctions against the enablers of Iran's shadow fleet. These are the middlemen and companies that were moving oil and weapons to fund global instability. Their accounts didn't just get flagged, they were completely zeroed out from the U.S. banking infrastructure. Every single one of these 608 targets represents a board member or an enabler of the old corporate world who can no longer move their money, hold a visa, or touch a single dollar under U.S. jurisdiction. It's a literal financial gallows for the globalist elite. They can no longer move their money. They are essentially digitally executed from the world economy. Trump used Executive Order 13818 to turn the global financial system into a cage for the very people who built it. It's a bang. It's a boomerang. And family, it's sweet poetic justice. These people thought they were untouchable because of their wealth, and now their wealth is the very thing that is being used to track and trap them. Before now, well, we knew that the board was bankrupt morally, but now they are bankrupt both morally and financially. So how about that? And this brings us back to the chaos in the Middle East and the strange things we're seeing with world leaders. There's still videos circulating around questioning the status of Bibi Netanyahu and his brother. By now, maybe the world actually knows if Netanyahu is actually dead or not. But here is the tsunami perspective. Don't get distracted by the bells and whistles. If you ever saw The Godfather, you may remember the enemy's closer strategy used in that movie. President Trump is America first through and through. He is a stable genius who knows how to make his enemies his allies and to achieve real peace. And if the Netanyahu we see on your screen is a digital placeholder, or if he's really dead, that's just part of the theater. Keep in mind that the White Hats are dismantling the Rothschild-funded power structure that has ruled since 1948. And the real goal here is the destruction of the Greater Israel Project that Professor Zhang exposed on Piers Morgan. That dark AI surveillance state agenda. Trump's strikes on Iran's Karg Island in March was not just about energy prices. They were about smashing the centuries-old crown chokehold on global power. The UK has been funding terrorists for 40 years by their banking and insurance businesses. Lloyd's of London removed their coverage of tankers within hours of the bombing, which started the increase in oil. And Trump then offered his own coverage of the strait, which is going a long way of ripping these businesses out from their control of oil pricing. In my opinion, the underlying cause was to shut down the globalist financial system, which Trump has exposed beautifully. There's no other reason for the increase in oil and gas other than the UK's attempt to maintain control, since we are the highest oil producers in the world. We're seeing foreign-tied overseas bases shut down and Commonwealth-linked operations being reclaimed for the American Republic so that there's no more secret outposts serving alien masters. Trump is invoking Article 2 to restore our sovereignty under common law. He is summoning the flag officers to Virginia to ensure their loyalty is to the Republic, not the corporate facade of U.S. Inc. The debt-based, deception-driven fraud is over. Whether it's the Ukrainian orphanages being exposed by Karina Hutzbout or the financial fraud being audited by Scott Bessent, the great accounting is here. This is why we're in a war. It's not just about borders or oil. It's a war to save our souls from the evildoers ruling the world. The dark forces have acted as a catalyst for change, pushing us to the point where we can no longer look away. We have to realize that this is a war for the soul of humanity. Janice Shaw and Vanessa Nobili have been speaking out about the forgotten generation in Ukraine. The orphanages where babies were left in cots for years, neglected and wasted away, while the world's elite used that country as a playground for corruption. And even worse, those same orphanages were often used as front operations for the globalist elite. Karina Hootspout has had proof of this for 30 years, and she had nowhere to go because the board controlled the media and the courts. But the board is disappearing. Are you noticing? We got the supply of children to Zorro Ranch and the elite circles in the USA now being laid bare in the Epstein Library. This is the ball-worshipping system that has used blood and suffering to maintain its power. But the military mobilization under Trump is the physical manifestation of a spiritual cleansing. Every flag officer standing in Virginia is making a choice. You either stand with the children and the republic, or you stand with the traffickers and the corporate death cult. The spiritual weight of this war includes a line. It's a line being drawn in the sand, and it is a deep one. There is no middle ground anymore. We are moving toward a world where the human soul is no longer a commodity to be traded. One republic, one law, and one commander-in-chief. The storm is not just coming. It is here, and it is magnificent. Stay sovereign, stay sassy, and keep your soul intact because the best is finally here. Hey, thanks for listening to the Tsunami of Truth. I'm Kristy Allen, and we're just getting started here on jmcbroadcasting.com.
The Federal Reserve is no more a government agency than Federal Express. The Federal Reserve is a corporation founded and run by international bankers.
The Global Financial Reset is not just another podcast or episode of pertinent current discussions concerning economic-related issues. It's also an ongoing educational workshop series.
Join me and my prominent guests every Wednesday live at 8:30 p.m. Eastern on JMC Broadcasting's backup Rumble channel on X, Facebook, and YouTube. Sign up for JMC's free weekly war report, including notifications of when the Global Financial Reset show is published. The future is bright, and it belongs to us, not to the global elite.
You can survive and thrive this reset transition, but it takes action on your behalf. The Global Financial Reset Workshop Series gives you the tools to get out of the system with confidence.